Hey developers, today I'm going to show you a quick and straightforward way of adding authentication to your Vue.js applications. Now this is an open source project that I've been working on for quite a while. It actually supports not just Vue, but React and Angular too. But today I'm going to show you how you can get up and running with Vue.js. So basically you can add authentication to your apps in just a few minutes. We'll also take a look at how we can customize this for your use cases. So that way we can change the text, we can make it look a little different, and how you can add it into your applications. Hey, and as always, if you can, make sure you click that subscribe button. That helps me out. Yeah, let's just jump into it. To do the authentication and authorization in the backend, we're going to use the AWS free tier. So if you don't have an AWS account, you can just click on the link I have in the description. You can get over 12 months for free. In fact, we're going to be using Cognito, which is the way we're going to connect to Amazon's authentication authorization system. And I believe for up to 50,000 users, it's free. So you can actually use this even if you've already gone through your AWS free tier plan. So just keep that in mind. So after you have signed up and created your AWS account, what you'll need to do is log into your console. So you just need to go into AWS Management Console and then type in AWS Amplify. You click right here, and this will bring up the AWS Amplify administration tools that we'll need to use to get started. So you'll see something like this. Just click Get Started. Down here at the bottom, you can see here, it says Get Started. You can either create an app backend or host your web app. So we're going to create an app backend, and then we're going to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it YT test for this YouTube video that we're doing right now. And then this will go ahead and set up the admin UI. And then while it's doing that, we can go ahead and make sure that we have our front end set up correctly. So I went ahead and off camera, I created this brand new Vue app. If you're not familiar with Vue, you can install Vue CLI or something called Vite, and you can create a brand new app through there. So this is what it looks like kind of out of the box. And then after you have this scaffold of this Vue app running, you just need to run npm install. And there's a couple of libraries we're going to use in the front end. And to follow along, I'll also include a link to this. This is our brand new Amplify site. This is what I've been working on since I joined AWS. And what we're trying to do is we're going to install some components that'll make this much easier for ourselves. So you can click this little button here in the top right-hand corner. It looks like a V for Vue. And I'd like to click the Getting Started. And then right here, it tells you right away you can install npm or yarn. And essentially, you need to install AWS Amplify and AWS Amplify UI Vue. I'll copy it here, and then I'll paste it into the console. And I'll hit enter, and this will install all the libraries I need to get started inside my Vue app. Okay, so we installed the libraries we need in our front end, but for the back end, we can go ahead and create it using the administration UI or admin UI. If you click this admin UI button, this will show up after we created that project. It'll bring you to this interface. Now this interface allows you to add in content, user management, but what we really care about right now is authentication. And it defaults on this screen, and it basically says, if you like to, we suggest you can start off with having people sign in with their email addresses, which I'm going to go ahead and leave it as that. And then you can also, if you want additional login mechanisms, you can add phone number, Facebook, or you can even have Google, Amazon, or sign in with Apple if you want to do what are called federated logins. That'll take more additional setup. So maybe in a future video, if you guys are interested, leave a comment below on that, and I'll show you how to do that. But we also can do this configure sign up, and this will allow us to add in additional attributes. So email is defaulted in there because we're going to sign in through email. But let's say we also want to add in, let's say, a nickname. So that way when people create their accounts, they have to enter their email as well as a nickname. And then it has some password protection settings, which we're just going to leave it by default. And we're going to click this button which is deploy. And what it's going to do is going to create everything in the back end we need, so that way we can get it working with our front end. So this will just take a moment. Okay, so after it's done completed deploying, you can click on the top right hand corner, and it gives you this Amplify pull. What you need to do is copy and paste this into your editor so it grabs the information for this backend that you just created. So I'm going to go back to my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open up my editor, and actually I do have it already running. I'm going to stop it from running, And the next thing I do is I'm going to use the Amplify CLI. Now, if you don't have the Amplify CLI installed, it's pretty simple to install. You just do npm install at AWS Amplify /CLI tac-g, and this will go ahead and install it for the command line. So I already have it installed, and I'll put a link in the description too if you want to know how to install it. I'll just copy and paste. So once again, I'll come back over here. I'll make sure I have it copied, and then I'll paste it, and I'll hit enter. And what this will do is it'll contact Amplify services, and it will ask me if I want to approve it, and then if everything's okay, it'll download into the project itself, and it'll download some files that we need to be able to use authentication. Also, if this is the first time using the Amplify CLI, it might ask you to init first. You have to run Amplify init, or you might have to run a few more commands to make sure that Amplify is set up correctly. So you can see here it automatically detected this, and it said, do you want to log in? So I'm going to click yes there, and it received the tokens correctly in the CLI, and now it's going to ask me a few questions. I'm using Visual Studio Code, JavaScript, Vue, source, dist. I'm just going to hit enter all through these because it automatically detected my project already. And do you want to plan on modifying the backend? I always leave a yes there because then it makes sure it downloads all the files for me. And what it does, it's creating these cloud formation templates. It's going to create a folder for me. So if I look inside what it did, I now have this new Amplify folder. And then inside this Amplify folder, I have my backend, I have my auth types, essentially everything that it needed to create the authentication is all in here. It has these files that basically are cloud formation templates that I can change later. So if I ever needed to make some changes, it's there. It also adds this AWS exports file right here into my app.vue. And we'll need that file to be able to connect to our backend service. And that's one of the reasons we installed AWS Amplify in the previous step. So let's see if we can get this working. I'm going to close this out. And first thing I want to do is go into my main file. And actually, before I do that, I need to do one thing. If you notice, I actually created this template using TypeScript. And if I try to do an import of that file, so that AWS config file from, it's not listing here. So what I need to do first is I'm going to go into my TSConfig, and I'm going to add in allow.js, and it defaults to false, but I'm going to put it to true. I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to go back to this file here, to my main.ts, and now you can see it does show up as it's supposed to, AWS exports. So I'm going to import in auth from AWS Amplify, if I can spell it right. And then I'm going to do auth.config figure, and I'm going to pass in the AWS config file. And also, I want to use this AWS Amplify UI view, which is going to be our authenticator that we're going to bring in. And it has some CSS in it, so I'm going to add that in. So I'm going to import this at AWS Amplify UI view styles.css. And if you're confused on how I'm doing this, I'll make sure I include the directions. If you go to the getting started, it says you should import it in right here. So that's how I know how to do it. And there's also a bunch of documentation here on the authenticator. How do you do a quick start here and how you bring in the authenticator in. So I'm going to save this. And now I'm going to go back to my home view. And while I'm at it, I'm going to start the server again. Serve, npm run serve. And in my home view, I should be able to grab use the authenticator. And so this is like a UI component that we can just put into any of our Vue, React, Angular apps that makes authentication, authorization much easier. This is the TypeScript setup. I've been using script setup lately for Vue 3 projects. I kind of prefer it, but I guess in this case, I'll just leave it as defined component for now. So I'm going to import Authenticator from, once again, this UI view. And then I have to define it in here. And then I'm going to add it in here. And this is one thing with Vue, you can have it uppercase or lowercase. So I'm going to have it lowercase and just make sure it shows up. And if I did this all correctly, it should show up here. So I'm going to refresh. Cool, here it is. Here is the app that we've been creating. And you can notice if I click create account, it has this nickname field. It also has LastPass, and it has other password manager support. So you can see right here, it's asking you can generate passwords, which is really nice. So I can basically, comes out of the box, and I can completely configure this too. I can get rid of this top tab. I can make it so people can't create accounts and they can only sign in, and vice versa. But let's see if we can kind of get this working. So one thing I kind of want to do first is this authenticator. I want to close the authenticator. And there's actually some slots that we can use. And so I can do vslot here. And we can do this a couple different ways. I'll show you. We can do vslot. And I can grab some values out of here, which I can then use inside my app. So anything between the opening and closing brackets of the authenticator will only show up when the user's logged in. So I can add in user here and sign out, and then I'll add a button here called sign out, and I'll save this so it looks a little nicer. Then I'll have a click handler that will just call sign out, and I'll just do an H3 here, and I'll do user dot. In this case, I want to do attributes. I think it's called nickname. So let's do that. So now come back over here. Now I'm going to try to create an account and then see if it works correctly. So I'm going to create an account, test123. I'm just going to use one of my many email addresses, and nickname, I'm just going to call it Nick. I'll call it, I don't know, Bravo. I'll have my nickname is Bravo, and I'll click create account. Now you can see here, all these screens are built in, and look, my LastPass came up. I'm not going to save it. And now I should be able, in my other screen here, I'm going to see if I received an email, which I should have. And I'm going to grab the passcode. I'm going to enter in the passcode. I'm going to click confirm. And cool, so now I am logged in. And by the way, it shows the Bravo there that I had. So I can do hi, save it. So hi Bravo. So now I'm completely logged in. Everything's working as it's expected. I have a sign out button. So let's see if it works to sign back in. So if I click sign out, it shows back this screen here to sign in. I can go back in here, put my test123 account that I just created with the password. I'll hit enter, it automatically signs in. Cool, it's still working. One thing too is I'm using this, you can use this slots or the slot syntax inside Vue, but you can actually, if you only have one slot, one default slot you have to worry about, you can actually add it right to the authenticator. So if I do vslot here, and then add in this user sign out, I can actually delete this template, and it's a little bit cleaner. Works the same way. You can see here, nothing changes. But so that's another way to do it. So let's see if we can customize this form to make it look a little different. And I'll show you some common customizations. So like, let's say we didn't want this to start on the sign in page, but on the create account page. You can see right here, by the way, since we're using TypeScript, you can see all the different props that you can add in. There's initial state, login mechanism, services, variation, source providers. So I'll show you one common one. So this initial state here takes a string, and we just pass in the string, let's say sign up to it. And now if you refresh it, it automatically starts on the sign up page. You can also put it on the reset password page, which puts you at this page, which is the same thing as clicking this forgot your password button at the bottom. So this is kind of just a handy way if you needed to only have it start on a certain page. Another customization we can do is we can have it set up and start up as a modal. So I'm going to delete this initial state here. And then I'm going to use something called variation. And in this variation, it takes a string, and if I send it over modal, which in fact I can bind it here. And by the way, if I don't have this colon here, I can just pass in a string. So if I just want to do it like this will work too. Variation. And if I pass it, you can see now it's just modal. So this whole background is grayed out. It centers it in the middle. It's on a fixed position. So this can be nice if you want to add this to a modal in your app instead of having to kind of line it where you want otherwise. Now, another important aspect that we can customize on this is how we log in. Now, we had set up the Amplify UI as email, but we can override that specifically inside the Authenticator. So we have something called login mechanisms, and this accepts an array of strings. Make sure you send in an array of strings. So I can, instead of doing email, I can just, let's say I want to change this to username. And now you see username here. So it changed this to username and asks for not just username, but also obviously still asks for the nickname and email. You can also change this to phone number. If I change it like that and I save it, now it shows phone number and it has this prefix and everything for you. Just realize if you do change this, make sure that your backend matches. It should automatically detect it based on the AWS exports file, and you can always pull that AWS exports file again if you make changes, but this is one way you kind of overwrite that. We can also add in social providers. So inside this Authenticator, this prop for social providers, and this just takes, and once again, an array of social providers. So let's say I put in Facebook. If I save it there, now we have this sign in with Facebook at the top. I can also add in Google or Amazon. And so now I have both of these buttons at the top of my Authenticator. And they're going to be hooked up, but you're still going to have to go into the back end of our admin UI and set them up with the correct information for Facebook and Google and Amazon or whatever else you're using. But it's really nice that you can quickly add this into your Authenticator app. Okay, so let's take a look at some more customization we can do. Now, if we look at the official documentation, we can actually add in a number of different slots. And we have slots for the header, we have slots for the footer, we have slots for the sign-in header and sign-in footer. So we can replace text or replace information in those spaces to kind of customize this and make it look at the way we want. And by the way, I went ahead and switched it back to using this template format instead of putting this V slot on the Authenticator. And the reason I did that was because if you have the V slot on the Authenticator component itself, you can only have one thing underneath it, basically the default slot. But since we want to have multiple slots on here, we need to add this kind of template syntax. So now inside here, I can create another template for my header for another slot. And I need to put in V slot again. And by the way, you can put in # too, but I think that's a little more confusing, so I'm not going to use that format. I'll put V slot, and then you put colon, and then the name of the header. So I'm going to put in sign in header, or the name of the slot, I should say. And now I can use some syntax here, and I can put in custom sign in header. And if I hit enter there, I'll come back to here, and now you can see I have custom sign in header at the top. And let's say I wanted to change the bottom. So let's take a look. So I'm going to quickly copy and paste this. And instead of called the sign in header, it's going to be called sign in footer. And I'm going to call this footer. And now you can see I have a custom sign in footer at the bottom as well. And I can add links in here or whatever else I need. So let's say I wanted to add in a link here to a page. I can just, inside this template, inside the opening and closing brackets, I can go ahead and just pop whatever I need inside here, a link, and it will automatically show up. So that's as simple as it is. And we can do the same thing with the create account page. So if I change this to sign up footer, and I'll change this word to up, and I save it, you see now if I go to create account, I have now my custom sign up footer and a custom sign up footer, header and footer, which I can customize all I want. I even have a slot inside here for sign up fields. So I'll show you an example that we have in our documentation. So if I wanted to change the sign up fields, you can see right here that I have import Amplify AWS Amplify, but I have this sign up fields where I can submit my own custom form fields. I can create a custom checkbox, and I can even have some custom validation in it too, which is really powerful. Something I'm not going to cover in this video, but something that you can do as well. So I'm always looking for other ways if you want to add additional fields to these forms or make changes to them. So let's say we wanted to make additional changes to the colors here, like this kind of bluish color that maybe it doesn't match the theme of the app or website. So that is another thing we can do. If you look in our official documentation and go to styling, you can see here there's a whole bunch of CSS variables, and you can click here and see them all. But let's say I wanted to just add all these and make some changes. So inside my app, I'm going to create a style tab. Inside there, I'm going to copy and paste this. And you can see here I have background, primary, background, secondary, text color. I don't know, let's say I want to make this purple. And I want the background color to be green, and the secondary to be yellow, and this background primary to be, I don't know, white. Let's say orange. I don't know what this is going to look like, but let's take a look. If I come back over here, okay, I have an extremely ugly authenticator, but it works because I have now made all these changes, and I can certainly go through and make more changes. There's a whole bunch of things we can do with the theme. In actually React, we can even do, there's a whole provider system, which is not available yet in Vue, but one day it will be. Another common thing I've seen people do is they want to get rid of the tabs at the top. So let's say I would just grab this here and I'll paste it. So now I can get rid of the tabs at the top. If I take a look again, now I have no tabs. So there's a whole bunch of customization in this. In fact, if you didn't want styles at all, if you go into that main file where I had the styles.css, if I just comment it out, you can get a completely basically a app that's not styled at all. And so you can kind of start with this and then just put in all your styles you want. And we have this very simple system of these data attributes that you can just override inside your style sheets whenever the authenticator shows up, and you can make it to look however you want. So I think this is a good kind of starter video. I'm going to stop here. That's a lot of information. I'm really proud of this. I think we've done a lot of work. There's still more work to do. We want to add in more features. There's still more things we want to put in here. But let me know, leave a comment below if what you think, and have a great day.